So this week, we are going to be getting into nutrition. Specifically, this week, I want to talk about the different nutritional approaches that you can take with your coach that aren't necessarily tracking macros every single week, plus minus 5 grams. So the majority of our women, I'm going to say about 75% of the women that we coach do follow macro tracking very specifically, where we give you your grams of carbs, your grams of protein, and your grams of fat every single week. But macro tracking isn't for everyone, and it's also not necessarily something that you have to do forever. For me personally, I macro tracked on and off for about 6 years, and if and when I do get into another competition prep or I set a goal, I will resume macro tracking. But I have done this so long now that I am fully intuitive eating. And this is something that a lot of our women want to get to because, you're not necessarily going to go out to a restaurant or a barbecue and bring your scale and enter everything into MyFitnessPal. So I wanted to talk about the different options that you can have a conversation with your coach to say like, hey, this is something I might want to try. So typically when women start with us with Lady the F Up, for most of them, we start them on a meal plan, and then over the first 4 weeks, we transition you into how to track macros. So this is when you're working towards a goal, it's really helpful. Kind of think of it like if you're saving for something financially, you put aside a specific amount of money every single week or every single month to save up for that, and you can track your finances to see how much you're spending, how much you're taking in terms of income. So when we track macros, that gives us kind of the similar data as to how many calories are you putting into your body versus our rough guesstimate of how many calories are you burning, and that gives us the calories in, calories out for a body composition change, where we're losing fat, adding muscle, or adding a little bit of fat, but our goal is really to add muscle. It varies from person to person, what stage you're in. A lot of what I talked about 2 weeks ago on macros and nutrition covers that. So I wanted to cover what else you could do nutritionally. A lot of people find that macros are a little bit tedious. I have tons of clients that love them, and personally, when I am working towards a goal where I'm leaning out, or you're doing a 60-day challenge or a photo shoot prep, macros are going to be the absolute best approach to lean out, but also allow you to eat the foods that you want. So there was actually a study that came out within the last 2 weeks where they compared two groups of people, where some followed a rigid meal plan where the coach was like, here's your meal plan, eat this every single day, and then made slight changes to it, versus the people that were given macros and just said, meet your macros as best as you can. And at the end of that study, the changes in body composition and fat loss were no different, essentially. So whether you're following a meal plan or tracking macros, we want to make sure that you're equipped with the knowledge and the skills that whenever you decide to go out on your own, you don't necessarily have to track forever. So a couple of different things that you can do. If you are interested in this, bring it up with your coach and say, hey, I heard Lexi talk about this, or like if you're one of my clients, hey, I heard you talk about it, and I would like to try this, maybe not in the next couple of weeks, but somewhere in the near future, and you and your coach can talk about a game plan. So instead of having specific macro ranges, one of the things that we do, especially when women are in more of a body recomposition or a growth phase, is we give calorie ranges instead. So instead of, I want you to eat 1650 calories with this much protein, this much carbs, and this much fat, we give a range instead, saying, I want you to eat 1600 to 1700 calories with at least 140 grams of protein. So however you split up your carbs and your fats is entirely up to you. It can change every single day as well, so you don't have to hit the same macros every day. When losing body fat, the main thing that is the most important is hitting your minimum protein. So we talked about that 2 weeks ago, of that roughly 1 gram per pound of body weight. So as long as you're hitting that as a general guideline, how your carbs and your fats are split won't make as much of a difference from fat loss, But there's a reason that us as coaches give you higher carbs or give you higher fats, because as we push you and we increase the cardio, we want to make sure that you either have sufficient energy or your body doesn't have sufficient energy from carbs, so that as we add on the resistance training and the cardio, it's going to change your body composition overall. So you can try that. I have women who have very, very large ranges where I want you to eat 2,000 to 2,500 calories in a day with at least 150 grams of protein, or 170 or 190. So if you want to work on a calorie range, you can. Another thing that we have is just tracking everything and hitting minimum protein. So you don't necessarily have a calorie goal to work towards. This is more intuitive eating and listening to your body, being like, okay, I know as a 140-pound person, I need to eat at least 140 grams of protein, but I'm not going to target specific calories. I'm just going to kind of intuitively eat, listen to my body, make sure I'm spacing out my protein. So you're getting that 20 to 40 grams of protein every 3 to 4 hours. But whatever else you pair with your protein is entirely up to you, and you're just tracking it. So some days, if you had a really busy day, you might be eating 1,300 calories with that minimum 140 grams of protein. And other days where you're hungry, or maybe you're going out for lunch with girlfriends and you're going out to a restaurant, maybe that day's 2,300. And as long as you can track it, and when you check in with us on a weekly basis, we can see roughly how many calories you consumed for the week. That can give us a guesstimate of, okay, well, this was the approximate calories in, this is what we're thinking for calories out. So that is another approach if you don't want to have to pre-plan and meal prep and figure it out, and work more intuitively on listening to your body's hunger cues. Another thing that we do is, especially with it being summer right now, is higher calories on the weekend and lower calories on the weekdays. So for some people, the lower calorie range is Sunday to Thursday, so you can go out on Friday and Saturday and enjoy meals. For some people, your restrictions are Monday to Friday, and then higher calories Saturday and Sunday, so that you can do like family events. But this way, when we calculate it, we look at it from a weekly average. So on average for the week, you're eating 1,900 calories, but from Monday to Friday, or from Sunday to Thursday, you're eating 1,600, so that on those two higher days, you have 2,300, 2,400, something like that to work with, so that you can have more balance. You can enjoy that time with your family or with your friends if you're going out. And it's those weekly calories that balance out over time, having lower calories during the week and higher calories during the weekend, as long as it's not putting you in a weekly surplus where overall you're eating more calories than you are burning. It will still lead to progress, and you won't have to be so mentally stressed. Kind of similar to that is, instead of tracking your lower and your higher days, you have one or two what I like to call balance days in the week. So for most people, especially the clients that I work with, it falls on a Saturday, because Saturdays are typically the social days where you can go out to a barbecue or you can go out to a restaurant and not really have to think about calculating your macros. It's just a day where you're mindful, you're not eating like an asshole, you're still being aware of your food choices, you're having a nutritious breakfast, you're having a high protein lunch, you're having some protein before you go out for that evening event. But when you're at the evening event, you can have a glass of wine, you can have a drink, you can have a burger and fries and chips and stuff, and just have a bit of a mental break. And I find that a lot of my women really, really enjoy this, and they can still see progress because it kind of acts, when you're not tracking and you go out in an evening, oftentimes you're going to be eating in a slight surplus, but it can have a bit of a refeed effect, where if you've been in a deficit for 6 days, now all of your muscle gas tanks are a little bit drained, and having that higher day kind of tops them off. I'll get into refeeds in a little bit more detail 2 weeks from now. Does anyone have questions on those approaches? Let me just check Facebook to see if there are any questions there. I don't think so. Okay. So other things that we can implement are completely intuitive eating or non-tracking days or weeks. So if you're someone that has signed up with your coach for 20 weeks, or you know that you have 4 weeks or 8 weeks left in your program, reach out to your coach and say, hey, by the end of this, I would love to know how to intuitively eat. And there's a lot of resources that we have about how your plate should look, using different hand guidelines as to what you should fill your plate with, so that you don't have to weigh your food, you don't have to track it, and you can still see progress. Now, what I said earlier about having that budget of calories in, calories out, if you intuitively eat, we cannot guarantee that you're going to see the progress that you would if we knew exactly how many grams of carbs, protein, and fat that you were eating day to day. But for a lot of you, you just want to feel better overall. You want to be able to enjoy your life balance. So intuitive eating, you could try on a day, or you could try a whole week. And this is where, with the PALM guidelines, some of you may have already heard this, where with meals, you want to have 1 to 2 palms of protein. And then you have cupped hands. So cupped hands, you can either have 1 cupped hand or 2 cupped hands of veggies or rice, starchy carbs, leafy greens, and then thumbs of fat. So if I was giving a general recommendation on PALM guidelines of how a woman's plate should look, 1 to 2 palms of protein. So this can be eggs, meat. If you're vegetarian or vegan, go back to the last episode 2 weeks ago where we talked about different types of protein sources for you guys. It could be a protein shake even, so having a scoop of protein. 1 to 2 palms is roughly going to give you that 20 to 40 grams of protein per serving, just as a general guideline. Different sources will be higher, different sources will be lower, just generic blanket statement there. The next thing would be a closed fist of starchy carbs. So this would be your quinoa or your rice or your pasta or your sweet potato, your white potato, a serving size of a fist. And then you want either 1 to 2 cupped hands of leafy vegetables or greens or a salad, or maybe if you just want to have like your sweet potato and your chicken as your palm for your main meal, maybe it's a cupped hand of blueberries or 1 banana or 1 apple as your additional carb. And then for fats, if you're going for a fattier meat, like a steak or some pork or maybe chicken thighs or chicken wings instead of your leaner meats such as lean ground turkey, chicken breast, your fish, shellfish. So the fattier meats, you don't necessarily need to have your thumb of fats. But if you are having something leaner, such as chicken breast or fish, that's where you want to incorporate a thumb. That can be like a tablespoon of oils if you're cooking your meals that way. It could also be pumpkin seeds or a nut butter. I'm just trying to think of other. I don't eat a ton of fats. Most of my fats come from my fattier meats. I don't love chicken breast, I don't love chicken breast. I haven't had chicken breast on its own in a very long time. I am much more of a chicken thigh girl, and that's where I get most of my fats from. Yeah, so those are the PALM guidelines as well. Oh, Cheryl had a question. Hi, Cheryl. If you are doing intuitive eating, but you don't eat a lot of protein for lunch, can you double up on protein for dinner? You definitely can. It's not going to have the same benefit as spreading out your protein for those 20 to 40 gram servings, or like if you're having those 2 palm sizes. So it's not going to have the same benefit in terms of muscle growth. But if you fast all day and you're like, oh my God, I haven't eaten anything all day, I'm super, super hungry, what should I eat? I always tell my women, if they're sick or if they're injured or if they haven't eaten anything all day, your goal is to hit at least 100 grams of protein for the day. And yes, that's going to be a lot. I don't recommend consuming 100 grams of protein in one sitting. That's a lot to digest and you'll feel really, really heavy. But if you need to make up your protein because you occasionally forgot to eat or something came up in your life and you weren't able to consume it in those times spaced out, that's okay. Once in a while is all right. There are many, many studies out there that have shown that anywhere from 60 to 100 grams of protein, if you consume it in one sitting, it will be broken down and utilized and digested. And then the excess protein that isn't used in the body gets converted to nitric oxide, and then your body gets rid of it. So I would say, yes, you can double up on the protein, but don't make it an everyday thing. 5. So thank you for joining me tonight. Have a wonderful Wednesday evening, and we will be back next Wednesday to sweat and make our muscles hurt in a good way.